Now, no one that is watching this video on this channel is going to pretend to me that there isn't a Sussex PR machine. If you are, you must have been living under a rock, because we know it exists. It was used against the late Queen to devastating effect. Hi, and thank you so much for joining me on the Vintage Read Show. Well, I have been amazed that over the last 4 days, the stories about Dr Sophie Chandauka's claims against the Sentebale Board of Trustees and, of course, the founder patrons, which is Prince Harry and Prince Ciso, has actually been distorted. How it's sort of been turned on its head and a new narrative has been added. And there's even implications being bandied about that in some way the Charity Commission is going to find something nefarious about her and her activities. And it is false because it's based on a false narrative. Also, that's not what the Charity Commission is doing. At no time did Dr Sophie ever imply that the Board of Trustees were guilty of any sort of financial impropriety. Likewise, there's never been any allegations of financial impropriety against Dr Sophie Chandauka. And yet you see in comments below videos and you see the prevailing narrative that people are implying that some sort of financial impropriety will be found by the Charity Commission. And they're also implying that, well, who knows, things could turn the other way, which is basically just a smear campaign based on a made-up premise. And it's not based on the facts of the situation. Now, to be clear, Dr Sophie framed her actions, framed her claims that she reported to the Charity Commission as poor governance, weak executive management, abuse of power, bullying, harassment, misogyny and misogynoir, which you've all heard and you all know. But the point has to be made that weak governance and weak executive leadership has nothing to do with financial impropriety. And in fact, she gave a very clear example of weak governance to Trevor Phillips on the Sky News Sunday interview. And not only did she provide details of that accusation of weak governance, she also said that it's clearly provable because you just have to look at the data of Sentebale over the last 7 years, which is what she did when she took up the reins in 2023. So you can see this slight twist, this implication that financial impropriety is going to be found, and not only found against the founders, patrons and Board of Trustees, which is not a claim that has ever been made, or she has never claimed to have anything substantial to back such a claim. She's never made such a claim. Not only do people accept that that's the premise of this action with the Charity Commission actual investigation, they twist it and imply, like I said, oh, well, I'm just waiting to see. I bet she's got some skeletons in her closet. If they don't say it directly, they imply it. And it is awfully unfair, and it is not based in fact. So what is this claim of weak governance that I think she provided ample detail of to Trevor Phillips in the interview? Of course, the Charity Commission would have to look at the figures and the data, which she has been able to provide them. She said that when she took over, that she looked over the last 7 years of financials to see what sort of state Sentebale was in. And when she looked into those figures, because figures don't lie, she found that donations and sponsorships had markedly dropped off after Prince Harry essentially left the royal family and left the UK. It had a severe impact on Sentebale's bottom line. They lost major sponsors, they lost major donors. And these were donors that had been with Sentebale since its inception, families, individuals, large companies. And this concerned her. So she assumed, all right, so they would be very aware of this very troubling development, and obviously they would have taken immediate steps to address it, right? No, they didn't. Everybody ignored it. And the reason why they ignored it was they didn't want to upset Harry. Now, I'm being sarcastic because that is essentially it. They were so scared of the petty, petulant prince's reaction that when she questioned the chief executive to work out, well, why? When I look back over the minutes, when I look back over the board trustees' meetings, I can't see any trustee bringing up the fact that we're bleeding money, that we're losing major donors, that we're losing sponsorship. Nobody's bringing it up. And if nobody's bringing it up, how can it be addressed? How can a plan be put in place? How can we counteract this? They didn't even mention it. And like I said, she went to the chief executive and said, look, why isn't this being addressed? Why am I looking back over, the last 7 years of minutes of board meetings and finding that no one has even raised the fact that we're losing money, that we're losing major donors, that we're losing major sponsorship? And like I said, the explanation was they felt very uncomfortable bringing up anything about that while Prince Harry was there. Now, Ian Rawlinson, who was sitting next to her for the Trevor Phillips interview, made the very valid point that the whole point of having a board of trustees is to serve the charity, so that it is in its optimum health, so that when people donate money and sponsors, sponsor them, that they can be guaranteed that it's well governed, that the funds will get where they need to go. And Ian Rawlinson made the very valid point that if there is people on the Board of Trustees that are not serving the charity, but rather protecting the founder patron, then there's a conflict of interest. Their protection is divided. They're not caring about the outcome of Sentebale. They're caring about the outcomes for Prince Harry and his image. And do you see, he said that rather puts things in a muddle, which I thought that was a very low-key sort of English statement. But he's right. It puts it in a muddle. It divides the camps and it causes a great deal of dysfunction. Now, those claims will be easy to prove because, like Dr Sophie Chandauka actually said, the data proves it. When you look back over the financials over the last 7 years, you can see the steep decline. And you know that it coincides with Prince Harry essentially leaving the royal family and leaving the UK and then doubling down on that damage by actually doing damaging interviews against the royal family and smearing them and implying that they are somehow racist. Also accepting awards like the Ripple of Hope Award for institutional racism. It just doesn't go down well with sponsors and donors. Now, her impactful claims resonated with a lot of people because it appeared to confirm what many have thought for many, many years, that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were actually using his remaining charities as burnishment for their PR, just to sort of burnish his reputation and make him seem like he's still prince-like and still representing charity in a meaningful way. One of the major complaints about his representation as founder patron of the Invictus Games is the fact that people feel like he's using the Games for his own PR. He's using it rather than working for the Games and ensuring that everything goes to the veterans and to the veterans' benefit. He's sort of using Invictus Games to just keep him in the game, so to speak. Now, Dr Sophie Chandauka actually provided evidence of that as well in the Trevor Phillips interview because she mentioned that Sentebale charity polo match. And she said it all went pear-shaped when Harry suddenly announced that he was going to bring the Netflix crew along to actually film that charity polo match. Now, she makes the very good point that no one had been forewarned. There wasn't any sort of legalities in place to ensure that people didn't mind being filmed. Your standard sort of disclaimer that you would have to distribute to everybody there that day in case they appeared on camera. That hadn't even been put in place. The other thing was that originally where it was going to be held had been donated. It was sponsored and donated by somebody who thought that he was benefiting charity. Suddenly, a Netflix crew is coming along to film for a commercial production, a commercial enterprise, whereupon the owner of said venue said, well, look, this is now a commercial thing. This isn't just purely for charity, so these are my terms. This is what I want. I want a cut of the action. And Sentebale, quite frankly, couldn't afford it. So then Harry had to step in and through a friend of his found another venue, which was probably, the aim all along. And so that upset a lot of people on the ground at Sentebale because Sophie Chandauka actually says months and months of work and preparation had gone into it. And then he just arrogantly steps in at the last minute with his Netflix crew and expects everyone to bow down to what he wants. So then unexpectedly, Meghan Markle turns up. Of course she turned up because the Netflix crew was going to be there and she wanted to be centre stage and cosplay her Julia Roberts thing at the Polo. And she turned up unexpectedly, which resulted in sort of bad choreography, as Sophie Chandauka actually described it, on the podium when they were presenting the winning cup to the winning team for the match. Now, we all saw Meghan Markle behave appallingly, trying to make sure she maintained her centre stage position and pushing Dr Sophie off to one side and ensuring that she stayed next to Harry and, of course, centre of the shot, centre of the Netflix camera crew's shot. And we also saw that and we called it out at the time and we said how rude, how pathetic. Really, this woman just does not know how to behave in a polite and classy manner. She just doesn't have it in her. She doesn't have the education or the background to be able to pull off anything with dignity. And so she got a lot of backlash. Whereupon Prince Harry asked Dr Sophie Chandauka to actually make a statement saying, basically excusing Meghan's behaviour. And she refused. She said no, because she knew that it would cause so much media interest and so much focus on the story and that it would make Sentebale in the middle of a storm, a PR storm, and being reported on for all the wrong things, being reported on for this sort of gossipy, ridiculous narrative, protecting the little bully Meghan Markle, and she didn't want any part of it. And do you know why? Because they were already bleeding donors and sponsors due to the very toxic Sussex brand. So from April 2024, Sophie Chandauka actually claims that is when the bullying and harassment started. She said that in board trustee meetings, she was treated in an appalling manner, even to the point that other people were sending her private messages during meetings saying, this is absolutely appalling, saying, I don't ever want to attend another meeting again, and basically wishing to stand up for her. But she remained very cool and calm and kept her cool and just carried on in a dignified manner until Harry upped the ante and actually intervened, talking to donors and sponsors and encouraging them not to deal with her. And that was when she became very concerned, because then he was interfering in the bottom line. He was interfering in funding, and his only purpose to do so was to elevate this lack of confidence in her and to have an excuse to request, basically, her dismissal. Now, I know that all these are just claims and they're from one side of the coin. But the fact of the matter is that Prince Harry and his sources have not made any counterclaims. They have not fought this. They've just run away. They ran away. This mass resignation was because Sophie Chandauka actually stood up for herself. Now, the Charity Commission may find that it all went too far. They may find that there is a lack of confidence in Sophie Chandauka. They may find that the Board of Trustees was actually forced to resign due to this petty little spat. And that's why, yes, we should await the Commission's report. But what I'm objecting to is people implying that financial impropriety is going to be found and implying that somehow these allegations of financial impropriety are going to be found against Dr Sophie Chandauka. And that is slanderous because, like I said, there is no basis in fact at all for those claims. So in other words, a baseless insinuation. Another extraordinary aspect of this story is the fact that people are accusing commentators of being swayed because of their dislike of Prince Harry, and they're allowing that to inform their sort of angle on this story. I disagree. I think observation of his actions, observation of Meghan Markle's actions, particularly over the last 5 years, informs our response about these accusations. It informs our response about these claims, because with our own eyes, we have witnessed this. We have witnessed them using his charities and various organisations to burnish his own reputation, and in particular to burnish Meghan Markle's reputation after those horrendous bullying allegations, recent ones too, with The Hollywood Reporter and Vanity Fair. What do you think the whole appearance at Invictus Games was about? To counter that narrative. Now, she also makes the very valid point that the harassment and bullying at scale, and this is the quote, "The only reason I'm here is because at some point on Tuesday, Prince Harry authorised the release of a damaging piece of news to the outside world without informing me or my country directors or my executive director, unleashing the Sussex PR machine." Now, no one that is watching this video on this channel is going to pretend to me that there isn't a Sussex PR machine. If you are, you must have been living under a rock, because we know it exists. It was used against the late Queen to devastating effect. It was used against King Charles III, Queen Camilla, Prince William, and particularly Catherine. Campaign against Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was very much the result of the Sussex PR machine, and it was relentless. It was a relentless campaign to smear her reputation, to paint her as a racist of all things, and to make her seem standoffish and cold and not who she seems to be. It pretty much launched from the day Meghan Markle appeared on UK shores. And you only have to go to her own blog, The Tig, to realise that the campaign started way back in 2014. So it was definitely part of the PR Sussex campaign and PR Sussex smear against Catherine, the Princess of Wales. So it is a real tactic I've witnessed by my own research. I've witnessed it by the duplicitous duo. I've seen it. So I tend to give some veracity to Sophie Chandauka's claims in that regard. I can believe it because I've witnessed it happening against others. But as far as if anything nefarious is going to be found as to the organisation of Sentebale, or whether there are indeed nefarious financial practices being carried out by either side, well then that's a new story. That's a different story. And that would need to be addressed at the time with the facts delivered from the Charity Commission. But at the moment, it's just invented. It's an invented tale. And it's being used to do Prince Harry's dirty work for him. It's being used to actually smear a woman who at this stage should be given the benefit of the doubt and regarded at the very least as someone who is making claims, is a brave whistleblower, until facts appear that contradict that narrative. And that is why I'm making this video, because there are no facts to support the smearing of this woman and her professional reputation. And until there are, I think it is so unfair to imply it without any facts or reason to do so. So let me know what you think down below, and I'll be back very soon. Bye.